Hi everyone, and thank you for listening to my talk. This talk is all about understanding diversity in childcare and how this is influenced by sedentarization in a mobile hunter and gatherer population, in particular the Agta from the Philippines. So it's well established that a wide range of individuals help mothers look after their children, but who the allomother is varies significantly by ecology and culture. A couple of studies recently have looked into the effects of market integration on childcare, finding that in the Maya, fathers provided more care as society became more market integrated over time. And in Tanzania, it's been established that distant kin and non-kin become more important allomothers in the town compared to the rural villages. Therefore, it's evident that transitions matter. And what we're interested in is understanding what are the effects of the transition from a mobile hunter and gathering to sedentarized cultivation, and if these changes in childcare can be predicted by a particular theory. Now, the theory I had in mind is that of risk. Allomothering is a form of cooperation, which has long been argued to evolve to deal with unpredictable environments. So when you're not sure about your future returns, which happens when returns are unpredictable, it may make sense to cooperate now when you have resources, so you'll be able to receive help later on when you don't have resources and you need that help. So it acts as a type of insurance. And it has been demonstrated that in humans, other mammals and avian species that cooperative breeding has evolved in more harsh and changeable environments. And this concept is referred to as risk pooling within the risk literature. The exchanges between individuals transfer the risk, reducing overall losses. And under a risk pooling system, cooperative networks should be diverse and wide, ensuring that the entire network doesn't experience a shortfall at the same time. And that's why we hypothesize that distant kin and non-kin are going to be important because they have different timings to exposure to risk. But there are multiple ways of dealing with risk, including risk retention. This is when households accept risk and absorb their losses by increasing the resources in the household to be able to do so. So here, individuals may remove themselves from wider cooperative networks as their households become independently able to protect themselves from shortfalls. And in fact, within a system of reciprocity, wealthier individuals or households may start withdrawing themselves from these cooperative networks because they, with the greater wealth, are more obligated to provide support without receiving much in return. Therefore, sedentarization and its associated increases in wealth and storage may be associated with reductions in childcare from non-kin and distant kin, and increases in childcare from the household, and in particular grandparents. So this leads to the research question that is who provides childcare dependent on risk-based strategies, which can be broken down and tested with 3 predictions. Prediction number 1 is that mobile hunter and gatherers will have wider cooperative networks and are made of distant kin and non-kin. A settlement will increase childcare from the household and grandparents and decrease it from distant kin and non-kin. And the final prediction is that more childcare in mobile camps will be from other mothers, and this will be based on reciprocity, as compared to post and pre-reproductive allomothers in settled camps who may be cooperation due to indirect fitness turns as predicted by kin selection. So these predictions were tested on some data which I collected with co-authors in 2013 and 14 from a population of about 1,000 Agta living in the Philippines. The Agta of Palanan live in Isabela province in northeast Luzon, pictured on the map here. And we conducted about 1 year of fieldwork over a 2-year period. They're primarily fisher foragers. They live on the coast and on rivers inland. So only about 3% of their activities are hunting. But the amount of time they spend in foraging versus non-foraging activities does vary largely. And we've published on this previously as it has effects for health and demographic and other behaviours. In particular, we see that in mobile camps, which is pictured on the left, individuals spend less time in wage labour and farming. The camps are made up of very temporal housing, and the people change in it very frequently. There's not so many wealth and much less belongings. In comparison, on the right, we have a picture of a sedentarized camp. While we visited that camp, the people tended to remain the same. The buildings remained the same. So it was wooden with a corrugated iron roof there. Also behind that camp is a rice paddy, which the Agta were cultivating. So what we want to do is use this variability in livelihood strategies to explore if there were changes in childcare. And we measured this childcare using focal follows. So myself and a co-author followed 78 children aged between the ages of 0 to 6 years for 9 hours over 3 non-consecutive days. we recorded every 30 seconds the interactions they had with allomothers, so individuals aged 6 and above, and if they were low investment, so proximity, watching, talking to, or high investment activities such as playing, feeding, cleaning. In total, on each child, we have 1,080 data points, and on average, children were interacting with 3 to 4 people per observation. This leads a total sample size of 1,522 dyadic interactions, and we're interested in exploring seeing if we can predict the number of interactions which occurred between a dyad based on an interaction between kinship and settlement. So we're interested if the amount of care from different kin varies by sedentarization. So I'll move on to the results for this project. So these are these plots are predicted probability plots based on the model fits. On the top, we have the high investment results, and at the bottom, we have the low investment results. These are separated into blue and yellow results. Blue are consistently in this presentation the results for the sedentarized camps, and yellow are the results for the mobile camps. So on the x-axis, we have all the different kin types, and for each kin type, they have 2 point estimates and 2 confidence intervals. And largely speaking, these confidence intervals are overlapping, but we can see in a couple of cases they do diverge depending on the campsite. So in particular, here in the top plot on the far right, we can see that sisters are doing a lot more high investment childcare in the sedentarized camps compared to the mobile camps, which is in line with our predictions. However, if we look in the bottom plot to the left for the results for brothers, we see that brothers are doing less low investment childcare in sedentarized camps compared to mobile camps, which is not consistent with our predictions. Furthermore, there's no consistent trends for fathers, distant kin, or non-kin. So therefore, while we did predict that sisters would be increasingly important allomothers, which we do find, there isn't really a consistent picture of increasing care from within the household compared to decreasing care from distant kin and non-kin, which would support the risk-based hypothesis. We do, however, as predicted, find that high investment care from grandparents was increased in the settled camps compared to the mobile camps. This effect was primarily due to grandmothers. So we redid the same analysis, and this time just separated grandparents into grandmothers and grandfathers. And by doing so, we find that grandfathers had little, the sedentarization had little effect on grandpaternal care. But for grandmothers, they offered about 5% of high investment care compared to less than 1% in mobile camps. Finally, we explored if the amount of childcare provided was predicted by the age and sex of the allomother and the camp type. So this is exactly the same predicted probability plot, and on the x-axis now we have just the age and sex of the individual, so boy, girl, male, female, and then post-reproductive male and post-reproductive female. And broadly speaking, we can see that there is no consistent trends in which the sedentarization increased or decreased the amount of care from a particular type of individual. So there's no evidence that other mothers provided more childcare in mobile camps as compared to sedentarized camps as we predicted. So overall, while there are clear differences in who provided the childcare in sedentarized camps compared to mobile camps, these do not really map on well to the predictions from the risk-based hypothesis, as indicated by different patterns for sisters and brothers. And there aren't really any patterns for fathers, distant kin and non-kin. There may well be other reasons why we see these changes, and because there are other hypotheses which have overlapping predictions with the risk-based hypothesis, and so we conducted a couple of exploratory analyses to think about these ideas further. So focusing on the grandmother results, we explored if there was any differences by camp type of the grandmother's care load. So in general in the Agta, lots of grandmothers still had children under the age of 11 because of age-specific fertility schedules. But we see that the number of children grandmothers had was actually dependent on settlement. So grandmothers in settled camps had 1 child under the age of 11 compared to mobile grandmothers who had 2 children. So these grandmothers without their own dependents were more likely to have more time, resources, energy available to provide high investment childcare to their grandchildren. Why this might be the case is unclear, and it may be that fertility schedules are, as I suspect, impacted by settlement, which requires further investigation and modelling. To look at the gender result, particularly the divergent result for brothers and sisters, we explored the wider database to look if there was any gender differences in domestic tasks, which is the plot on the left, and outer camp activities such as foraging, hunting, fishing, as well as farming, which is the plot on the right. And we separated this by gender and settlement. So this is again is a predicted probability plot. Here the girls are in red and the boys are in green. And on the x-axis we have mobile camps to the left and sedentarized camps to the right. And the results show that in mobile camp, gender has very little effect on the types of activities the children are doing. However, this does change in sedentarized camps, where we see that girls are doing significantly more domestic tasks than boys, and they are out of camp less than boys. And this is a finding which has been found in a number of hunter and gatherer populations, particularly as they transition to more farming. And it may be due to the fact that sedentarization and farming is associated with increased domestic tasks, which are within the strength and the ability to children to do. Now, why this falls onto girls is unclear, but it may be related to more direct assignment from parents with reduced freedoms about them being able to choose what they do. And also, if girls are in camp more often, they are frequently reassigned to activities. It may also be demographic changes are happening in the camp, which mean the mixed age play groups change into smaller age-specific and sex-specific play groups that no longer provide adequate childcare for children. And then the focus shifts onto the sisters as childcare works better in line with their domestic tasks. Which we found to be they've been doing more. So a detailed explanation into the composition of playgroups would be important to explore these results further. So to summarise the results, who provides childcare does change by settlement. However, our findings do not strongly support the risk-based hypothesis. And while our findings do show that grandmothers and sisters are increasing the amount of activity in permanent camps, the overall pattern is not consistent enough. And this might be indicative of wider demographic changes which should be explored further. As populations around the world undergo a number of transitions, it's vitally important that we are able to understand how these changes influence childcare, especially of young children who are dependent on this care for their well-being and survival. I do think it's possible to predict these changes, and looking into demographic trends might be an important avenue for future research. So this leaves me just to say thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you for my co-authors, my lab, universities and institutions, and most importantly, the Agta.